I remember back when I was writing some of my very first nonprofit grants. I'd done some other types of writing before, so I thought, how hard could grant writing really be? Through the help of a very patient mentor and a lot of practice, I learned that nonprofit grant writing is quite a bit different from a lot of other types of writing. So in this video, I want to share a handful of some of the tips that my first nonprofit mentor gave me that I really believe contributed to my future success in grant writing. And these are no nonsense, super practical tips that you can apply basically right away. Welcome back. I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I'm a nonprofit founder and executive director of the nonprofit that I started. I've done a bit of fundraising in this role, which includes grant writing, and so I hope that this video helps you out. I make lots of videos here on YouTube all about nonprofits, social impact projects, starting an organization, social enterprise, and more. So definitely subscribe if that's your thing. I hope that this video and my other videos help you out. And as always, if you need a little extra guidance and support from me, I have a website, foundertofulltime.com, that features a handful of trainings now all about helping you figure out how to start a nonprofit from basically the idea stage up through getting it ready to file your paperwork, and now a new course on fundraising that I'm really excited about, Find and Grow Your Funding. So check that out, foundertofulltime.com. Okay, so as I previously mentioned, nonprofit grant writing is a bit different from creative writing, technical writing, lots of other types of writing. Now, in nonprofit grant writing, there's definitely some element of trying to inspire the reader to support your cause, but it's more about creating a clear and compelling case for how the funds that you would receive from the grant will help improve the way your organization is able to serve the community, and you want to do it in as clear a way as possible. So here are those 6 tips that my nonprofit mentor from long and far away ago gave me that really improved my grant writing, and I hope that they help you out too. Tip number 1, and this is probably the most important tip, that is, do your homework. Before you even sit down to write a grant proposal or fill out a grant application, you've got to do your homework to make sure that the application you're filling out or the grant you're applying for is one that you're actually eligible for, one that is a good fit for your organization. This is a top mistake that people make when applying for grants, is just throwing out all their applications in the hopes of something sticking. But what will happen is funders will get applications for projects or missions that they're not actually interested in, that they don't have listed as the issues that they are interested in on their website, and they will automatically disqualify those applications. So all of that to say, in summary, before you actually put pen to paper or hands to keyboards or whatever, make sure the grant you're applying for is the right grant for your organization. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, funders, in an effort to streamline this process, have attempted in many cases to make it easier for people applying for grants. They will typically list the issues, causes, and types of programs or projects they want to fund right on their website. So the first thing you should do is read through their website. Learn all about their criteria, what would make you an eligible organization, make sure you're a good fit. You can also take a look at some of the past organizations and past projects that they have funded to see if they are similar to the types of things that you might want to apply for funding for. Sometimes you can also learn the grant amounts that they have given out in the past, which will help guide you and help you figure out how much grant funding you should be requesting from that particular funder in your application. If the funder only gives out $5,000 to $10,000 per organization, but you are trying to ask them for $1 million, you might get rejected. That might not be considered within the scale or scope that they're willing to help out with. So make sure that you are aligning the issue, the cause, and the amount of funding you're asking for within appropriate parameters for that funder in order to make sure that you aren't rejected outright. Okay, tip number 2, and this is also pretty important. I mean, I guess all these tips are important, but this one I would say ranks pretty highly up there, and that is to be succinct and clear. One thing people don't necessarily think about when they're applying for grants is the fact that these grant makers or foundation team members are reading dozens or sometimes even hundreds of grant applications. So if the grants include a lot of unnecessary text or flowery language or information that just isn't relevant to the application, they might feel like you are wasting their time, and you're wasting your own time too. So it's really important and helpful, and the funders will thank you, if you can create your proposal or application in a way that is direct, to the point, succinct, really work on your wordsmithing skills here to get your point across in as few sentences as possible. I sometimes look back at some of the early grants that I wrote and just have a fun cringe moment at how vague and long-winded I was, but I hopefully have gotten a lot better. Now, to clarify, I'm not saying don't include important things. It's all about figuring out what is truly important to that application and then expressing that succinctly. So I'm not saying leave out information if it is truly critical to the application and to the funder's understanding of your program. The third super practical tip is to format your application or proposal for easy reading. Now, we know that grant applications and proposals take a couple of different forms. Maybe it is an online application where you're just answering questions in fields. Sometimes it's a bit more open-ended. They might be asking you to write a letter or a proposal on a document that's a little bit more free-flowing, and you determine the appropriate structure in that case. No matter which way you would be submitting your proposal or application, there are some things you can do to help make the reading experience a little easier for the funder reading your application. For example, wherever possible, I like to use subject headers or like titles of a section that mirror what the grant maker wants to know. For example, a header might be organization mission statement, or history of the nonprofits program. You know, something that is very clearly the title of the next section or set of paragraphs that they're going to read, so that it meets their expectations, they know what they're about to read. And if they need to find that information again, they can just look for that nice big header, maybe that's bold or in capital letters, whatever you've done to format it to be found easily. Your grant maker will be very grateful for that. I also like to use bullet points or short lists of things. For example, if I want to talk about all of the different benefits or reasons that my project is important to the community, I might choose to do that in a bullet point or numbered list format so that they can easily know, like, okay, here are the 3 reasons that Amber thinks this project is important. 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. Easy to find, easy to understand. One other little minor trick I sometimes use is, depending on how the proposal might be formatted, I will sometimes choose to bold really important words, phrases, or sentences, again, to help draw the funder or grant maker's eye to that part of my text so that they can see that easily and it is emphasized. Okay, tip number 4 is to use the funder's own language. When my mentor gave me this tip a long time ago, I thought it was really interesting. It's not something I would have thought of on my own. But the tip is to basically speak the language of the funder, of the grant maker. Use some of their own words or phrases back at them in your proposal. She didn't mean to do this in a disingenuous way or in a way that's not authentic. Obviously, you only want to use the funder's own words or phrases in a way that makes sense, that is relevant to what you're trying to say. An example might be, let's say the funder has emphasized how important the idea of systemic change is to their funding and their projects. And you know that systemic change is also important to your mission, so you've got an authentic connection. If it were me, I would use the words systemic change in that proposal a handful of times. This shows the funder that not only have you actually read their website and that you've taken the time to learn a little bit more about them, not just treating them like an ATM, but that you actually are interested in who they are also. And secondly, it underscores the fact that your mission and approach does align with theirs also. Tip number 5, I think, is a best practice no matter what you're doing, grant writing or other things, but that is to use and cite credible research in your grant application. It's really important to demonstrate that you know your subject matter, that you are, if possible, an expert in your subject matter, especially when it comes to the research around the issue that your nonprofit is tackling in order to serve its community. In general, I believe any nonprofit leader should aim to become an expert in the topics related to their mission. For example, affordable housing or homelessness or education or climate change, whatever it may be. If your nonprofit focuses on those issues, you should really be a leader in knowledge on those issues. And that is just going to help you with your cause in general. It'll make sure that your efforts actually make successful progress towards the goals of tackling those issues. And in the case of grant writing, it will prove that you are a credible resource and person to be trusted to carry out the mission that they might fund. So citing this credible research in your grant application not only shows that you've done your research, you know what you're talking about, but it also shows that other researchers have conducted studies or reports or have data that backs up and supports your nonprofit's approach to tackling that issue too. The 6th really important tip I will share with you today is to demonstrate how funding will make a real difference for your organization. This seems like a no-brainer, but I mean something a little bit more specific than what you might be thinking. I mean, of course, money will help with the nonprofit. This is obvious. But what I'm specifically talking about here is you want to be able to clearly articulate the difference in the future state of your organization in a world in which you have received this funding and your current state of the organization. What are the concrete ways that you can explain how and why the money would help you amplify your organization's ability to serve its community? For example, let's say you need $50,000 to be able to hire a new staff person and increase your program capacity. And if you have that new staff person, that is going to mean that you can serve double the amount of people you were able to serve previously. What that does in the funder's mind is says, wow, by this organization's calculations, if they can get the money to hire this critical new staff position, they'll be able to help hundreds more people or double the amount of people or whatever the number is. And that is a very compelling argument for why you should receive the funding. You've thought about it, you know the concrete way it will help serve your mission, and you can explain that to the funder. I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the questions that come up for you, or the big challenges that come up for you when you are grant writing? If you are new to grant writing or even a seasoned grant writer, what are your biggest challenges? Share those in the comments below and let's see what we're working with. Alternatively, I'd love to hear some of your tips too. So what are some things you've learned either through your experiences or a wonderful mentor of your own that you think would be valuable for our changemaker community here on my channel to know? Share all that in the comments. And as I mentioned before, if you need some additional help with the process of starting or growing a nonprofit or developing a fundraising plan for your nonprofit, definitely check out the trainings and resources on my website, foundertofulltime.com. Final thing, we have a group on Facebook called Change the World or Bust. Come join us there. We've got change makers from around the world having some good discussions and getting some much needed encouragement from each other. So I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you next time. Look for my next video next week. See you later.